Beyond the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick, Caroline Hyde, Taylor Riggs counting you down to the closing bell, here to help take us beyond the bell. It's our global simulcast, joined right now by Tim Stenovec and Katie Greifeld. We welcome our audiences across Bloomberg Television and radio, as well as on YouTube, to parse what has been a really wild day, a volatile day here, with stocks deep into the red here, and of course, well, bonds also deep into the red, pushing yields higher.
We just spoke with Ryan Dietrich over at the Carson Group. He's a technical analyst, and he's always a really optimistic guy. He's looking at the glass half full right now. He says we've got seasonality on our side for the fourth quarter of the year, and the midterms as well on our side for a year after midterm elections. Okay, this is what Ryan Dietrich told me. I don't know how to read into this.
Yeah.
But from the day of midterms,
yeah,
a year later, stocks have never been lower.
I've seen this stat before, and I mean, it's been well telegraphed. History repeats itself sometimes, but
he said that to us. History's repeating itself right now.
I thought it was supposed to rhyme, not repeat.
Well, we haven't gotten there yet, so maybe it doesn't rhyme. Maybe it's going to be like one of those really bad battle rappers who never sort of matches up.
Oh boy, we are so off track. I love it. I love this show.
I think we're on track.
Yeah, I want to talk about
battle rap track
all day.
I'm going to get
Thank
us
you,
back
Katie.
on track.
Now, Katie's the optimist. Look at that half full kind of person.
Sorry, Katie was dropping Drake lines from 2010 earlier today on her Twitter.
Yeah, what did you say earlier, Katie?
Drake just stands for do right and kill everything. He said that in 2010, which was 12 years ago.
Your mantra, right?
He's done pretty well.
I think about it every morning.
Do you really? You just write that on your bathroom mirror.
Big time.
What are you killing? It's a bit unnerving.
All right, in all seriousness, folks, interesting day here in the markets. It could have been a lot worse here. Stocks are off the lows of the day, but still going to finish in the red, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average down roughly about 118, 119 points, or about 0.4%. Now, take a look at the S&P 500, down 32 points, or about 0.9%. It's going to close right around 37.57. The low of the day was 37.49 here, so not far off the lows of the day. The NASDAQ Composite down about 1.4%. But the real decliner here on the day, it was lower out of the gate, and it stayed lower pretty much through the session. The Russell 2000 down more than 2% here at the close, down about 39 points.
Yeah, pretty broad-based in the S&P 500 on an individual stock basis. We only saw 90 stocks move higher in the S&P 500. 412 moved lower.
Take a look at where we are, Tim, on a sector level as well. There's only about 4 sectors in the green today, 2 sectors below sort of the headline indice. Pharma, as we've talked a lot about, the healthcare sector today being a big outperformer. Household products, of course, and media and telecom, but really not a lot to write home about. Everything else is in the red. Take a look at some of the worst performers. Katie, I'll do this for you. It's banks, it's dividend financials, and then you're also getting some semiconductors in there as well as some of the auto components. So sort of that classic long duration assets, the risk on trade, all of that a little bit unwinding today.
It's interesting. Banks have actually underperformed tech since the Fed started hiking. Not what you would have thought, but in any case, to get the gainers, Eli Lilly popping today, up almost 5%. That's after UBS upgraded the stock to buy from neutral. They had a pretty glowing report. They said that this is the, quote, most attractive name across large cap pharma coverage. They said that one of Eli Lilly's drugs that led to weight loss in a clinical trial could be the biggest drug ever. The biggest drug, not just Eli Lilly's biggest drug. Yeah, glowing. Valero Energy also rising today, bucking the trend that we saw in the energy sector, which was down today. You had an upgrade there. I believe it was from JP Morgan, raising their price target to $151 from $148. They maintained their overweight rating as well. And then you look at Activision Blizzard. Microsoft CEO said in a Bloomberg Television interview that he's confident the company can gain regulatory approval for its $69 billion purchase of the company. That's even with UK regulators giving it a pretty close look.
I'm just going to add too quickly to your board here. We were talking about this before the bells. Kano Health actually did a rally pretty hard into the close, up about 32% on the back of M&A speculation. Freshpet was also higher by about 16% on the back of a 10% stake revealed by JANA Partners, and Cassava Sciences up about 36% here on the day after being cleared after that Justice Department investigation.
All right, some other movers on the upside. Let's get some decliners on the board here. NVIDIA, chip stocks, really under pressure today. If you actually look at the stocks over the last 2 years, we're right now at the lows that we were at in November of 2020. So that's where the SOX is trading right now. NVIDIA, one of the companies dragging it lower, actually hitting a 52-week low today. Rising fears of a recession, surging yields, a bad combination for chip stocks. And then Darden Restaurants finishing the day down by more than 4.4%. It's the parent company of Olive Garden, Capital Grille, Bahama Breeze, and more. And in fact, it was Olive Garden that's got investors concerned. The company reported weaker than expected comp sales at Olive Garden, and then also came up short when it came to restaurant level margins.
I was really fascinated by this. And they actually talked a little bit about how some of the lower end consumers aren't necessarily dining out with the same frequency, which I thought was interesting as well, something to keep an eye on.
And then Digital World Acquisition Corporation, the SPAC tied to former President Trump, down another 5.4% today. It's fallen every day for the past 7 days.
You guys are still hitting that. Pop quiz, Tim. How many 52-week lows right now across the tape?
About today, Romaine?
Today, yeah.
Okay.
No.
Yesterday.
I would say this month about 400.
Okay, well, today it's
Okay.
244.
Okay, that's good. Not bad. Ryan Dietrich told us 400 this month.
Okay.
Yeah.
You like that guy.
He's
I like
great.
him too, yeah.
Yeah, just got a new job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I lure you over to some commodities? Maybe some FX? Flirting away the pair of you. Meanwhile, I'm looking at what's happening in terms of the Japanese yen. Really, I think the news of the day for all of us was the continued narrative and global central banks and also finance ministers weighing in to try and support their beleaguered FX, their currencies under duress because of a hawkish Federal Reserve. So the Japanese yen has been under so much pressure. Rallies were strengthening up more than a percentage point after we get that intervention, the first intervention that we've seen in decades. We're seeing, though, a Swiss franc that I'm afraid did not like the fact that the Swiss National Bank has managed to hike itself out of negativity. We're still lower, weakening versus the US dollar, and really that was because they didn't go far enough. I'm afraid 75 basis points is a new move in town. Bank of England only moved by 0.5%, and it was weaker, of course, against the US dollar overall as well. Canadian dollar loonie was weaker, even though we did see a bit of a overall rally in oil markets. That was despite some of the worries about global economy. Oil market did get bid up a little bit on the day. Natural gas is falling by some 7%. Steel actually a little bit higher, some of the metals getting a bid. And overall, it was a case of Japan once again intervening in the market. Interesting that we saw the Japanese bonds get a bid overall. Swiss bonds, significant bid after we saw the Swiss National Bank basically not do as much as the market anticipated.
It was such a day, Caroline, of global currencies, global central banks, global bond yields. I think it's a historic day, and I'm going to take just 2 seconds to pause about this, Caroline. As you were talking about sort of the end of zero interest rate policy, we'll take the BOJ out of that, but that big experiment, and it was a global experiment, at least if you were in Europe, is behind us. So we put that behind us, we move forward, and we move forward quickly as we think about rate of change and 7 basis points now. Again, a relentless 11-day streak on rising 2-year yields, the biggest streak that we've had since the Volcker era. What that means about a 4.11, and of course now on a 10-year, Romaine, a 3.70 that is up 17 basis points on the day.
And we were talking with someone a little bit earlier about short duration and how this has kind of become a crowded trade. I think it's interesting to see some of the sell-off now hit the longer end of the curve here, as maybe people are pricing in those recession probabilities at a rate that maybe we weren't doing before.
Hey, I want to talk about some of the companies that we're hearing more and more from. And you guys covered this on Bloomberg TV. We're going to be speaking to Lee Glasgow in just a second from Bloomberg Intelligence about the FedEx earnings that crossed a little earlier.
Oops, sticky fingers.
Yeah, 2:30
Tech issue.
versus 4 o'clock.
You know, one time I spilled
Romaine
coffee on my
Bostick.
keyboard.
Yeah.
For some reason, the E didn't work. So every time I typed out emails, it was all this just gibberish. Maybe that's what happened.
Well, in all seriousness,
You know they can get you new keyboards.
Oh, do you?
There's a ticket
Look
for
at you,
that.
fancy.
I'm trying to keep
Hopefully
us.
they're watching.
I'm trying to keep us on track here.
Well done,
No.
Tim.
We did
We're
see
on a
shares
track.
move
Katie
higher. The
Greifeld.
company talked about
Katie Greifeld's my new Caroline.
ways that
I like her.
the company will save costs in 2023, including actually closing some sort operations on Sundays. And I'm wondering how this changes the macroeconomic picture if we do indeed, Caroline, look at FedEx as sort of a bellwether here.
Well, I mean, Romaine, amid his rap battling, was signaling out what was in some of that earnings report that did come, or the 8K that came too early. And it did show that overall, broader, what was it, the package market depleting by 11% overall, Romaine? This is like headwinds across an entire industry group that idiosyncratically FedEx is having an issue about.
Well, that was 11% for FedEx, but we talked to Lee Glasgow as well. He seems to think this is more contained to FedEx than rather something broader. I don't know if I necessarily buy that, but he said that, and we've heard other analysts also make that case. I thought it was interesting, too. FedEx FedEx actually said they're going to raise prices too at the beginning of the year. I think roughly like 6.9%. So it'll be interesting to see how much pricing power they have, particularly if we are actually headed into a recession.
You bring up a good point, though, Tim. How much of this is execution risk on a single company versus some of those broader macro headwinds that all companies are experiencing? And again, with some of the pre-earnings, pre-announcements, and starting to get into earnings season, we're going to hear a lot more from these companies if they can or cannot make those full-year numbers.
Yeah, hard to believe the quarter wraps up next week, and then we're going to start to hear from companies in just a couple of weeks. That's going to do it for hearing from us this afternoon. Our cross-platform coverage of the market close right here on Bloomberg TV, on radio, and on YouTube. We are going to be back here, though, tomorrow, same time, same place.